What's up, guys? Today we're going to be looking at some of the top fantasy football strategies this upcoming season. And if you want to win your fantasy football league, hit the subscribe button for good luck and for, us to help you out and win your league. And help us out by commenting on the video, telling us some of your must drafts, telling us who you like. Let's get right into the first strategy, 0RB. This is definitely a riskier type of pick because we all know running backs are the most valuable position in fantasy football. But if you do the 0RB strategy, this is what your team would kind of look like if you had an early 1 through 4 pick. You'd probably start off with taking a guy like Ja'Marr Chase in the first round and solidifying your receivers by taking like Jalen Waddle, Christian Watson, and then finally taking like a Jahmyr Gibbs and Rachaad White maybe in the 4th and 5th round. And you could even take a quarterback early in Jalen Hurts. But that's what your team would look like. You can even solidify the Dallas Goedert and really go 0RB and keep pushing, our running back. And then you just you take a lot of running backs in the late round, some high-risk guys that have the capability to finish maybe as an RB1 this season.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like those running backs that are there in that 4-5 turn there. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs and Rachaad White both are starting backs for their respective teams, so I don't mind that strategy. I think this is a pretty decent squad here if this is what you're going to be rolling out with. But moving along on the flip-flop side of things, if you have a later round pick, let's say around the 8, 9, 10 range, I would consider late, you're looking at guys like Stephon Diggs and Garrett Wilson in the first, second round. Obviously, your top receivers in the league. Can't go wrong with either of those guys. I think both of those guys have the chance to finish top 5 in fantasy. You could follow that up with a guy like DK Metcalf. You could even go quarterback, like you were saying, Trav. That gives you, the later running backs allows you to draft a very highly sought after quarterback.
100%.
Like a guy like Lamar Jackson. I know you had Jalen Hurts in yours, but either of those two guys I think you can't go wrong with. And then you can go ahead and take a guy like Kenneth Walker in around the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. And Alexander Mattison as well, who's been shooting up draft boards because Dalvin Cook has left. Alexander Mattison is shooting up draft boards, so I like that pick as well. And then you got Evan Ingram in here, but this is just an example. Guys around that drafting position.
100%. And, doing 0RB is definitely a riskier strategy, but with the way that running backs are becoming more valuable in the NFL, which in return equate to more points in fantasy football, like Justin Jefferson and Ja'Marr Chase. I can't remember the last time, maybe outside of maybe even last year, that we were taking receivers at the number 1 overall pick. I think for the last 10 years, it's been running backs.
It's all running backs, yeah.
0RB is definitely becoming more of an increased liking of a strategy just because you can take Alexander Mattison, Rachaad White, Kenneth Walker, Aaron Jones that are going in the 4th and 5th round that are maybe like Aaron Jones, a top 10 running back in the league. And I get that he has to share with A.J. Dillon, but still, like, you can find some guys in the later round and then take riskier picks, with your bench players and hope that somebody pans out, and then your team is looking pretty solid.
Yeah, and I think all those guys that you just mentioned, if you're playing your PPR formats, like all those running backs that you just mentioned are great for passing as well. Yeah. Jahmyr Gibbs has been dicing people up running routes I've seen. So, I mean, I think you can't go wrong with this strategy this
100%.
year.
I mean, both strategies work, whether you're in the early or late. It just depends what side of the turn you're on. If instead of getting maybe a Jalen Hurts quarterback, you can go Garrett Wilson, which is a better receiver than the second receiver you'd take if you were early.
Right.
But the next strategy we have here is Hero RB. Hero RB is taking a running back in the first round, and that's like your hero. That's your Superman right there. And then you don't take a running back for God knows how long, and you just solidify the rest of your roster and then hope that you hit on a late round running back or just, play the waiver wire game and get your running back that way. So this you'd probably start off taking, especially if you're in the early pick, 1 through 4, you'd take a guy like Christian McCaffrey, even Austin Eckler, depending on who you like more. And then it's just load up on the receivers, load up on quarterback, load up on tight end, and worry about that second running back later. So get a guy like Chris Olave in the 2nd round, Keenan Allen in the 3rd, go Drake London, go Darren Waller, go Justin Fields to round out your team, and then maybe follow it up with like an Alexander Mattison, or even continue to draft your receivers and running backs and even go Khalil Herbert or Jaylen Warren as a RB3 or 4 on your team.
Yeah, I don't mind this at all. I prefer the no running back strategy over this one. But I mean, if you can get a top 3, top 2, top 1 even running back in all of fantasy, then really, does that second running back matter as much?
Yeah.
Especially if you can be smart with the waiver wires and be on the lookout and oh, Aaron Jones went down this week. Oh, okay. So then we can go pick up the backup for any guy that goes down, picking up the backups. I think the running back position is the main one that people are looking at on the waiver wires as the season's going on.
And injury to like a receiver position like a Justin Jefferson has a big impact, but not as big of an impact as if a number one running back went down, because now that backup running back for the team is getting all those touches, where if a receiver goes down, you're spreading it out between 3 or 4 guys, even maybe a tight end. So.
Yeah. And then again, on the flip-flop side, if you're rocking with a later pick in your fantasy draft, a 7, 8, 9, 10 range, you could start off. Hopefully Bijan is there for you guys. Bijan could be there. I wouldn't even mind kind of taking a little early shot on Nick Chubb here.
Yeah. Or Saquon might be there.
Right, or Saquon. So any of those guys would be an awesome hero running back first round. And then you could go ahead, like you said earlier, Garrett Wilson, maybe Stephon Diggs is there. Maybe some guys like that are there. You got Calvin Ridley, D-Hop now. So you, like you're saying, load up on the receivers after you get your one running back. You could go ahead. Trevor Lawrence, I think, is being drafted in like the 8th, 9th round. So go get you Trevor Lawrence for this. DeAndre Swift here as well. That's your extra running back. And that's not even a bad second RB, I don't think. I actually like DeAndre Swift this year. I think he's going to be the primary back in Philly. Maybe he'll be getting more of the passing work. So again, your PPR formats, you guys, DeAndre Swift's going to be helping you get some points there. Yeah. So this is an interesting strategy here as well.
I think if you're doing hero RB and you're going in with that strategy, I think having a later round pick definitely benefits you, because I feel like there's a tier break with the receivers in that mid-second round. Like if you're of a late pick, taking a guy like Saquon, Bijan, Nick Chubb, and then you get to follow it up with Garrett Wilson, CeeDee Lamb, even players like that. Whereas especially if you're in 12-man teams and you have an early 1, 2, 3 round pick and you want to go running back, that second round, maybe you're taking Olave, which, maybe you can get him in the 3rd. Like that's a little bit of a reach, especially if you're looking for value there. So I think late hero RB is that's the best strategy there. Mm-hmm. Next, we have robust RB. For those of you who don't know, robust RB is taking a running back in every single round, 1, 2, and 3. All the early rounds, you're taking a running back, and then you're worrying about everything else later. Everyone knows, receiver-wise, a team could put 3 receivers on the field at once. You're not really seeing a team put 3 or even 2 running backs on the field at once. So running backs could be more valuable. So taking 3 running backs in the first 3 rounds, and you're like, look, that 3rd running back, maybe he sits on the bench, but that now you have huge trade bait. You have huge value in case a guy goes down. Even throw him at your flex position, your 3rd running back. So in an early round strategy, this would maybe look like Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs in the 2nd, Joe Mixon in the 3rd. That trio of running backs right there. I mean, that could be a league-winning trio. And then you always can find late receivers like Chris Godwin, Drake London, Deontay Johnson, and maybe going Dak Prescott and Dallas Goedert later. But really, it's really focusing on piling up on as much early round running backs as you can to have the trade value, to have your team, be loaded at the running back position, which is the most valuable position in all of fantasy football.
Yeah, I think you brought up a very, very valid point there when you were explaining the whole situation. Every NFL team has 1 starting running back, but they could have up to 4 receivers on the field at one time.
Yep.
So that's weighing it right there, right? There's only 32 starting running backs in the league, but there's 32 times 3 starting receivers on each in the NFL.
Yeah.
So obviously the running back position is a very valuable one for fantasy just because of that. And then you're kind of screwing your team, your league mates over. If you're taking 3 top running backs, that thins out the running back draft opportunities for the rest of your draft mates.
100%.
So I like that strategy. Maybe if you want to piss off your friends in your fantasy leagues, maybe you'll be running with that one.
Hey, and then you could start a little train, a little people start panicking, taking a lot of running backs, and maybe some of those later receivers dip down, and now you have the ability to take them because you kind of started the run of running backs.
Exactly. But just again, to give you guys a little bit of a later pick view of how this draft could go if you're going to be taking 2-3 running backs early. Later, you could go ahead and grab you Saquon Barkley. I think we said it earlier, Bijan Robinson, Nick Chubb. You can go around and grab Derrick Henry in that 2nd round. And then you could even take Breece Hall in the 3rd. I know he could be a little bit risky for some. I know he's coming off the injury. But, I think this Jets team has a new fire under them with Aaron Rodgers at the helm. I think Breece Hall is going to help lead them to a great season this year. But after Breece Hall, you could go ahead and take you a Calvin Ridley. Amazing value, I think, there. Deontay Johnson, also I'm very high on, had 0 touchdowns last year. So the upside for Deontay Johnson, I think, is the sky's the limit for this guy. Jackson Smith-Njigba, you grab you a Justin Fields type guy, Pat Freiermuth type tight end. You know, not drafting too highly at those
100%.
positions. But yeah, I like the strategy here.
Yeah, the late round. What I'm thinking is, like, I like the late round hero running back, and I like the late round robust RB. Because that 3-4 turn allows you to take a guy like Calvin Ridley, which arguably could be a top 10 receiver in the league. So you're not falling that much at the receiver position. And hopefully Calvin Ridley's there, but there's still guys around the Calvin Ridley area that have the possibility of finishing as a top receiver in the league. And you still get Saquon and Derrick Henry. Maybe it's on Austin Eckler, but I'd personally rather have Saquon, Derrick Henry, and Breece Hall and Calvin Ridley on that end than Josh Jacobs, Eckler, and maybe a weaker receiver.
Yeah.
One.
110%.
But as I said, that was my second favorite strategy. The robust RB.
So what's your favorite strategy then, Trav?
My favorite strategy going into fantasy football is picking for value. It's so easy. Just take the best player available. Make it easy for yourself. Don't listen to all these ESPN rankings, these Yahoo rankings, sleeper rankings, these so-called fantasy experts that are telling you this is how you need to draft 1 through 20. This is how the first round should go. Draft based on who you think is going to perform well this season. If you think Jamar Chase is better than Justin Jefferson, take him at the 101. If you think Austin Eckler is better than Christian McCaffrey, take him at the 102. Take him at the 103. But just take the best player available who you think is the best player available. And that's just the best strategy every year. You go in, yes, you need to be flexible. Obviously, if you're drafting at the best player available and the best player available is running back every time, you don't want 8 running backs on your team and no receivers, no quarterbacks. But just draft, be flexible, take the best player available, and I promise you, your teams will turn out just fine.
I completely agree. This is the strategy I personally use every year, and I will definitely be using this year as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you get to, no matter where you're picking, if you get to, you're picking 8, and you get to 8, and oh no, all the guys that you were hoping are going to be there are gone, you got to pivot, right? If you were expecting to take a receiver in that first round, but guess what? None of the receivers that you like are there. Why are you going to reach on a receiver? Go get you a running back.
100%.
So you just got to be flexible. You got to be able to make quick decisions, quick on your toes. I think, obviously, if you're going to be doing a value system for drafting this year, I think you have to have a pretty good fantasy football knowledge. If you don't, you might screw yourself over. You got to know these players. You got to know their situations. That's just what it is.
Yeah, and taking the best player available, that doesn't mean when you draft based on value that you go in with no strategy, that you go in unprepared. If you're at the 108, 109 position and you're like, I'm going robust RB, I am taking Bijan Robinson at the 9, 100%. I want Bijan, I want Saquon, I'm going robust RB in the first 3 rounds. But then a guy like Jamar Chase falls all the way to the number 8 pick. You're telling me you're going to stick on your strategy? No.
Hell
Pivot.
No.
Draft based on value. Your team's going to turn out fine. But if you want to win your league, as we said, hit the subscribe button. And as always, cue that outro, baby.
Peace.